All right, guys, and we're back. Episode number 65 of the Daru Strong Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Daru. Today we have a guest from all the way from Super Training, Sacramento, California, Josh Settlage. Now, I've known Josh for a couple of years now. He's been working with Mark Bell over there in Super Training. He has just branched out and did his own thing. We'll talk more about that for his BJJ strength and conditioning programs and also his ability to correlate that over inside the weight room. But before we do that, I have to shout out the sponsors, VIVOBAREFOOT.com. Go ahead, check them out. You can use my discount code DARUSTRONG to get 10% off your final purchase. I highly recommend them if you're trying to increase your foot strength and just foot functionality, along with just being stylish and also, again, learning how to move your feet appropriately and not putting your foot in a disadvantageous position as you're walking through life or you're training. Check them out, VIVOBAREFOOT.com. Also, if you're interested in learning some of my methods, the protocols, the systems that I use for my athletes and myself, check out my mentorship program. It's a one-time fee and you'll get access for life. Trust me, if you are a coach, you do not want to miss out. We have over 900 coaches from around the world that I'm utilizing all of my experience, giving them the knowledge that I've attained over the years. And also we have a huge group of qualified coaches that are out there that are on the chat group going over systems and protocols that they've been using successfully. So you'll get to be a part of that community and you'll get to be a part of what I have as far as information. So check it out, DaruStrong.com, if you want to find out more details on that. Now, let's get on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast. Daru Strong Podcast.
Let's go. Mind over matter. Put your mind somewhere else and keep going. That little voice in your head is trying to stop you from getting to where you want to be. Be successful and keep moving forward.
With your host and world-renowned strength and conditioning coach, Phil Daru.
So, Josh, man, appreciate you coming. How do you say your last name, by the way?
Settlage.
Settlage. I was going to say it right. All right, I should be more confident in myself about my names.
Mark and NSCA have screwed it up so
For
bad
real?
because NSCA never said it right to begin with.
Yeah.
So he said Settlegate, and Mark as
That's
a
way
joke.
off.
Oh, it's
That's
way
off, bro.
So Mark and NSCA, or Mark and Andrew, kept running with it and never told NSCA like that he was
so
wrong.
funny.
And I forget who ended up telling him. And then Mark said, "Well, that's it.
That's
It's
it,
going to
man.
stick."
You got the nickname now and everything.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit. Well, first, let's tell people who you are. BJJ strength coach.
Yes, sir.
TikTok. Make sure you get his TikTok. We'll get on that afterwards.
Yes, sir.
So how did this all start, man? I know that you're a jiu-jitsu guy or you're a wrestler at one point, and then, strength coach. And how did this all begin? From the start, let's see. All right, what's going on, guys? You like easy money? Thanks to MyBookie and their lock of the season, if either team scores in the NFL season opener, you're going to win. Now, if you didn't know, a game hasn't ended in 0-0 since World War II. So this is a sure bet to win. Now head over to MYBOOKIE.AG, select lock of the season, and if any team scores between the Dallas Cowboys or the Tampa Bay Bucks, you're gonna win. The best bet you can make is the one you cannot lose. Now MyBookie is playing host to several exclusive contests, including their $100,000 Super Contest, and only costs you $10 to enter. There's big money on the line this season, so don't wait to get in the game. Join now. Head to MyBookie.ag today and use my promo code DARU and instantly receive double your first deposit. That's double your funds to double your winnings. And again, that promo code is DARU, D-A-R-U, to receive double your first deposit and get started with MyBookie today. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Yeah, well, at heart, I'm a giant meathead, so I started lifting first, and at the time, I was kind of dabbling in other forms of martial arts and stuff, but nothing too serious. And through a series of events, there was a guy at church that I looked up to, and I overheard my dad talking to his dad, and he said, "Yeah, my son Logan, he's been doing push-ups and sit-ups," and he was the cool guy. So I was like, all right, I guess by default I got to do push-ups and sit-ups. Yeah. So that's how it started, and then my uncles lifted, and so they were big influences on we got to check out who Ronnie Coleman is, you got to check out who Arnold is, and that's kind of how I entered and fell down the rabbit hole in that sense. And then in middle school is when I started wrestling. And I had seen very clearly in middle school, you kind of have such a wide range of what athletes look like in middle school. You can have like a 6th grade butterball, and then you can have an 8th grader that looks like he's almost a junior in high school.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's crazy to see the difference. And it was very clear to me very quickly that being stronger, being more explosive, being more powerful really helped. And sure, okay, a butterball could have better technique and could sometimes win, but most of the time it doesn't really work out that way.
True.
And so I kind of took that and ran with it. And when I got into high school, I was very invested in lifting, very invested in strength and conditioning. I was doing CrossFit for a little bit, as sometimes that's embarrassing to say, but there were some benefits from it.
Man, if you were to say that 10 years ago, you'd have been a man.
I know, right?
Now it's a little bit different.
To be fair, I did win the Fittest of Roseville competition as a 16-year-old. So
Nice, got the ribbon.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So that's kind of how I got interested initially in grappling sports and strength and conditioning, and I saw very quickly that because I started wrestling late, as most of the greatest wrestlers ever started when they were in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and I started in 8th grade, I saw that I was able to keep up and make a lot of progress very quickly because I was a better athlete physically. Now, my wrestling career didn't end with all the goals that I wanted to achieve, but I learned very quickly that being stronger, being more explosive, being more powerful definitely goes a long way.
For sure.
So I finished wrestling. I dabble in bodybuilding a little bit because I am a meathead. I do one bodybuilding show, and I was like, you know what, I don't know if this is like a lifelong career choice for me, but at least I did it.
You did it, yeah. So listen, I will say this, full disclaimer, I did the same.
Yeah.
So and I understood, and I was like, never again. But at least you got what you needed out of it.
That's
you
right.
got the understanding.
That's
of it,
right. Yeah, absolutely. And so it was a great learning experience. But after that, after the show, I recognized that I needed something a little bit more physical, a little bit more combative, something that, I don't know if I would say that brought me back to my roots of wrestling, but something that was a little bit that was more athletic than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding athletes are great and it's awesome, but that's a very grueling sport for something that doesn't have a lot of like explosive movements, a lot of dynamic stuff. So I ended up just transitioning into jiu-jitsu in 2017. And throughout that whole process, even when I was in high school, I was watching videos of Mark. I was in algebra class. I propped my book up on my desk and hit my phone. And I don't know, I can't remember what we were learning, but I was learning how to do good mornings again off of pins with chains. So that was the lesson for the day.
He is talking about Mark Bell, by the way.
Yes,
we'll
sir.
get into it.
Yes, sir. So when I started jiu-jitsu, I kind of had a repeat effect, if you would call it, of being a better athlete and being able to make progress very quickly because I was pretty mobile. I was decently fast. I was decently strong, and it ended up falling in love with jiu-jitsu. I was still a giant meathead, lifting all the time, and I quickly saw that there was a deficit in how many jiu-jitsu athletes viewed strength and conditioning. It was great how the UFC got started with Royce Gracie winning the UFC. He wasn't very physically imposing, and he beat a lot of bigger, stronger opponents. But then it kind of made that whole culture look like, well, jiu-jitsu, you don't really need to lift, you don't really need to be strong. There's good techniques, you'll handle yourself with good technique. And anyone that's done jiu-jitsu knows that that is true to a certain extent, but if two people are equally skilled, whoever's stronger, more powerful, more explosive, they're going to piece you up pretty bad. So I found that deficit within the jiu-jitsu community, at least kind of where I was training. And some people had been asking me questions like how are you able to apply that much pressure? How are you able to do this and stuff? And I said, well, I wrestled a little bit, which kind of helps. They're like, no, like when you grab us in certain things, like it just feels stronger. It's like, well, I lift all the time. I'm kind of a meathead. They're like, oh, you think that actually works for jiu-jitsu? And I was like, yeah, dog, it works. Yeah, it works a lot.
Yeah.
So long story short, I'm in college. I was originally going to go to school to be a physical therapist. I work at a physical therapy office and recognized very quickly that I think that's a great career, but it's probably not a great career for me. And so then I kind of set my eyes on what else could I do. All I really liked to do was lift weights and do jiu-jitsu. Mark was a meathead millionaire, and so watching him and him being so close, I was like, okay, well, what if I follow a similar trajectory of what Mark Bell did? I didn't necessarily invent a product, but I was able to use my love for being a meathead and being jacked and tan, and my love of jiu-jitsu, being able to blend those things.
He's been a part of Mark's spot for a minute.
100%.
I love it.
100%. So long story short, that kind of brings me where I am today. I worked for Mark Bell for a number of years, and now recently in July I've branched off and continued to run with my own company, Settlage Strength, and throughout that time I was able to meet a lot of great people, you included, and so that kind of brings me here today.
That's awesome, man. So you got some guys here competing.
Mm-hmm.
So who are those guys, and how'd you get started in like coaching them?
Yeah, so that was a fun experience, this getting into the coaching aspect, because before people would maybe ask you questions, off the side after live rolling and stuff. And when I finished wrestling, I stopped wrestling my junior year, and I took a break, a long break, mostly because I didn't really enjoy the sport anymore. I was pretty burnt out. But the guys that I wrestled with, I knew all of their younger brothers, and their younger brothers were coming up in high school. And so I got some connections with them and started training them.
Nice.
And that was kind of the only clientele that I had, was just high school wrestling athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the jiu-jitsu guys saw what I was doing with the wrestlers. Of course, like most in the wrestling community itself, it's very more accepting of lifting and being jacked and,
Definitely.
looking rocked in your singlet,
Yeah.
So they saw what I was doing with the wrestlers, and that kind of sparked some interest on their end.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of picked up and gained steam until it's kind of grown into a full business of where I'm the full-time strength and conditioning coach for grapplers, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu athletes. And so the guys that I have here today with us, Abdullah Shabir and Joban Singh, we all trained together at Kyasu Warnick Jiu-Jitsu in Sacramento, and they competed at the Pan Ams, or the Pan American Championships, this week. It was a rough week for our team, but we had walked away with a lot of good learning experiences and stuff, and that's just the name of the game.
Yeah, that's the thing about jiu-jitsu, man. You got multiple competitions, and you learn from every competition, and it's so different than anything that everybody has probably done in the past. If you're a wrestler, you kind of understand it. But like when I was fighting, I hated doing jiu-jitsu competitions, but I knew they were necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's funny, man, because you got, and if you're an MMA fighter, you can kind of understand this. It's like MMA guys that go to jiu-jitsu competitions, they're looking at it as another training, like another training, like, I'm just gonna go ahead and get a good roll in, right?
Yeah.
And those guys that only do jiu-jitsu, that's like life.
Yes.
So they're not playing around. So they get on the mat, they're slapping each other, and like, bro, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, bro, I'm just here to roll. That's it. And they're not playing around, man. So it is cool to see, the level of professionalism in a sense, and then just the sheer want to win.
Yeah.
And I guess you can kind of, I've seen it at least, that wrestlers that have the wrestler background, they have that easier transition.
Yeah, 100%. And thankfully I've been able to work with several wrestlers who did make that transition, similar to the one I made, where they either wrestled in high school and then transitioned to jiu-jitsu, or they wrestled in college and transitioned to jiu-jitsu. And for them, it's a weird thing, and I'm sure if you have experienced this too, for the wrestler, sometimes it's like, okay, let's dial it back a little bit, because wrestling is such a meat grinder of a sport, and wrestlers are usually not characterized by not doing enough. They're usually characterized by doing a little too much. And sometimes jiu-jitsu athletes fall on the other end of that spectrum, where maybe they don't do enough outside their mat time as far as strength and conditioning is concerned. So a wrestler transitioning into competition is very natural for them, but it has been kind of fun, like, hearing feedback from them saying, like, man, like, I feel better now going into this comp than I ever did when I was wrestling. And I'm sure some of that has to do with the weight cut and things like that. But
So when it comes to gi and no gi, right? You got a no gi guy that's primarily just focused on no gi, or you have a gi guy that's, more so focused on gi. What is the training? How's the trainer different from gi to no gi?
From just the strength and conditioning perspective. So gi there's so many grips. There's like an infinite amount of grips that you can have in the gi, which means the game slows down a ton. So it's I don't want to necessarily call it slow, because the matches aren't always slow. They are super explosive at times, but a lot of times it is a lot of isometrics, holding position, kind of waiting for an opportunity, a slow kind of steamroller approach to work to a better position to finish the match in a submission or to win on points. No-gi, on the other hand, you have a lot of grips, but you're also super sweaty. So things slip a lot, which means that a lot of athletes rely on extreme amounts of flexibility to kind of hold their opponent in place, or extreme amounts of power and explosiveness and speed to be able to get to positions. A great guy, actually two great guys from the same team, Gary Tonin and Nicky Rod. Nicky Rod came from a wrestling background, and it's very obvious, you know.
Yeah.
He wrestles with his shirt off all the time, so he's super slippery, and a lot of his game is based off of either really tight controls followed by big explosive movements to get past their guard or to take their back, or he's creating some sort of framing structure to just hold them in place, whether it's on the back, whether he's working body lock passes.
Gotcha.
And Gary Tonin's very similar. He's, I think, arguably like one of the most exciting grapplers on the planet. He's flying all over the place.
He's fighting now too.
And won championship. I think he's still undefeated, and he's
maybe 2
lined
or
up
3-0.
for I think he's almost there for a number one contender spot and going for a title.
I mean, when you're that much of a specialist, it is kind of hard, you know, to defeat that one person. And that's where, like, you look at Ronda Rousey and her reign for so long, when she was that good at that one particular thing. It's going to take a long time for other individuals, especially with his ability. Like, he's like a leg lock specialist, is that right?
He broke into the scene as a leg lock specialist because the defense for leg locks wasn't as sophisticated, but he's pretty well-rounded and taking the back and being able to attack from all sorts of positions, but he kind of made his name originally as a leg lock guy.
I know as just an MMA fighter going into jiu-jitsu, like, that was so weird, like when people were grabbing at your feet.
Yeah.
The guys were like, what are you doing? And then it's hard. And then if you're if you're practicing on that thing and you know exactly the setups and everything else, man, it gets weird. And then especially, you're not really thinking about that when you're fighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and for me, I'm not trying to go to your feet because I'm thinking about punching you in the face.
Yeah.
You know? But it works. It works if you are a specialist and you've been training that and drilling it over and over again. Talk a little bit about the importance of drilling. Now, I know, because you are a jiu-jitsu guy, so I know that, and also wrestler, how important for young athletes, young jiu-jitsu practitioners to drill.
Drilling's huge, and I think that's another thing that I've recognized in the contrast between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Wrestling is very drilling heavy. It's kind of built into that culture, and it has been for a number of years. Jiu-jitsu, on the other hand, you do have some schools that they are pretty heavy on drilling, but a lot of times it's like you just show up and roll. We just pick some technique from YouTube, show everybody, and then we just roll for an hour. And that's great. There is benefit to that, but a lot of the times if you're not getting experience in those positions, when you experience that position in competition, you don't have, I don't want to say muscle memory, because that we kind of know
that's
that.
true. It's about right.
Yeah.
It's about
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's unconscious competence.
Yeah. So you don't have the unconscious competence to be able to work through that position or escape that position. And then another thing that I found is drilling can be huge for conditioning. A lot of times when guys are doing live rolling, especially when they're gearing up for a competition, if they're mimicking live training rounds like they would be in competition, if they start to get tired, they'll find a comfortable position for them to be in that's going to slow the pace of the match down or the pace of the roll down. And a lot of times that doesn't have a lot of great conditioning carryovers because they aren't pushing through that threshold to really work on what they need to work on to have the gas that they need later in the match.
They're pacing themselves. In a sense.
Exactly. Yep. And there is benefit to that, but you can take drilling. There's a lot of different combinations and setups you can use for drilling in particular to get a really good conditioning stimulus out of that and force them to work at a high work rate. And when we talk about training density, getting the most amount of work done in a short period of time, drilling can be huge for that as well.
Yeah. So when it comes down to your strength conditioning, how many days a week are you usually working your guys?
So the guys that are with me today, we lift 3 days a week. We run a very similar condensed conjugate program, which you originally showed me several years ago. And because we have the freedom to be able to lift 3 days a week, we lift 3 days a week. We used to do it with 4. That was a little rough. We tried it with 2, and it wasn't enough. Yeah, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So we kind of found a happy medium, if you will.
I gotta show you my 3-day model.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah, so I have the 2-day and the 3-day. We switched it up for the boxers.
Okay.
Because boxers needed more anyways. They weren't training as much. We even tried to do the 3-day model with the MMA guys, and it was too much.
Okay.
But these are the guys from Sanford MMA, so they're getting after it. You know? Even with the ATT guys, it was still a little bit too much. But But yeah, with jiu-jitsu, I would say 3-day mile is perfect. 4 days would be obviously overkill.
Yeah.
2 days, again, they're not really getting as much as they need to.
Yeah.
You know, but you're right. I see that a lot, and that's where like I have the arguments with some of the skills coaches, in a sense. Not an argument, but you know, we see different. They believe sometimes that most of their conditioning will come from the skills training, which again it will. Mm-hmm. But if they're really solid and they are technically sound, and they're efficient in every movement inside the cage or on the mats, they're gonna pace themselves accordingly. Yeah. So like guys that come in and they know how to spar, they know they've been fighting forever. You know, a guy like Dustin can come in right off the couch. Not to say that he ever does, but like, and let's say not in fight shape, but still go 5-minute rounds with anybody in the gym because he's so efficient with his movement and he's comfortable. And if you take him out of that uncomfortable, or you take him out of that comfortable environment, you get him uncomfortable, then you're going to cause some positive adaptation. Absolutely. You know, so that's where you come in when it comes to strength and conditioning. You know, and I think that a lot of guys have to take that into account because they'll never actually get better because of the fact that they're just kind of staying in their zone. Yeah. You know.
Absolutely. We've all done it. And I know, like, even for myself, I'll go into a training session and think like I'm really going to push myself. Like, I want everyone to give me that smoke. Yeah. And I start rolling with Joe Bond and like the pace starts creeping up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tie him up somehow and just hold him for 30 seconds and catch my wind.
It's natural. It's a natural thing, man. Because you want to win.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? You're a competitor, so in your mind, you're already thinking about the strategical advantage I can gain, and then you're going to go through the tactics to allow you to be better than him.
Absolutely.
And so with that, you know, so, all right, now let's talk about some exercises, because that's kind of what I see you on your TikTok now. Killing it, by the way.
Yes,
what's your TikTok again? Let's go ahead and shout that out.
Joshua Settlage.
All right, there you go. So what are the prime, let's say main compound exercises that you're utilizing with your jiu-jitsu athletes?
So a lot of them have been inspired by you when I found your videos years ago. So the Zercher squat, and I'd throw a Zercher box squat in there. Those are going to be huge. The floor press is a big one, and especially when we're talking about the conjugate system, all variations of those. So Zercher box squat against bands, Zercher box squat against chains, Zercher pause squats, all that stuff. So the Zercher squat's big. The floor press is big. One that I am a huge fan of for vertical pressing is going to be the Z press. Yep. We've played around with other forms of overhead pressing, and with some guys who have great mobility and stability, that works. But for most athletes starting out, the Z press is such a good litmus test, because if they have poor mobility, they end up falling backwards. Yep. Or if they're if they don't have a lot of core stability or trunk stability, they end up getting all sorts of goofy positions. So I'm a big fan of the Z press. Sumo deadlift, I freaking love the sumo deadlift, and conventional deadlift too, but I suck at conventional deadlift, so I kind of prefer sumo deadlift. But if the athletes can get in good position, then yes, they'll do both. Trap bar as well. Yep. Pull-ups, chin-ups, body weight and weighted versions. Bent over rows and other variations of bent over rows, like the pendlay row, and even stuff like the chest supported rows. So incline chest supported rows.
You see my seal row?
I saw it. I've been dying to try it out. I was telling him, like, we need one of those NST.
Man, shout out to Go Strong, man. They gave me 2 of them.
2?
Yeah, so I put 1 in my other gym. Yeah, man.
Nice.
I got 2 of them hanging around here somewhere. But yeah, it's awesome. And then we use that for for our assessments too as well. So we'll do like 50% of body weight. Okay. And they'll do max reps with it.
And is it the one that has the handles on that you kind of unrack, or do you set a bar in there and then?
No, it has the handles, so you can do different bars.
Nice.
So I do like a Duffalo bar pull or something like that. Then you can attach bands. It has bands attachments. So you can go assisted and resisted. It's awesome. Yeah. It's dope, man. Check it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to me like all those things do correlate very well. What have you seen that has been the most challenging for your athletes?
A couple things. Depending on the athlete, buy-in has been pretty big, and I think that's something every coach experiences, especially just starting out. I'm pretty early in my career compared to yourself. The name I've built for myself isn't as big, so sometimes people are a little hesitant. They're like, man, like I'm going to roll.
You just got to look at your ears, bro.
That's right. Ears do all the talking.
Look at as soon as when I met you, I was like, oh no, he trains. I see that. Didn't I say that? That was like the first thing I said, right?
Yes, sir.
Like, that's it.
Yes, sir.
Badge of honor, man.
That's right.
I don't have them, man. I don't know what happened. I got a little bit here, but my ears are super malleable. So my wife likes it though. She's happy.
My wife likes my ears.
Just kidding. My bad. Look at
No, you're
fucker
good.
got mad about this. Fuck this guy, man.
Nah, you're good. You're good. But some hurdles are just establishing buy-in. So establishing trust within that relationship
Sure.
to say, like, look, man, like, I know we're not doing weighted hip escapes, but trust me, like, this squat is going to help you get better on the mat, or it's going to help you decrease your overall risk of injury. A lot of times guys are kind of afraid to strain against weight, and not necessarily strain in an unsafe way. It's very structured and it's very safe the way we set things up, but sometimes they feel that little bit of resistance. They're like, nah, I don't got it.
But they lack the confidence.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's been a big hurdle. And then the other thing, which especially with those two guys in particular, they train so much and they train so hard all the time, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to have conversations like, hey, we're just gonna dial it back just a little bit today, or we're just gonna, the rest. We have the AM crew, which is a group of about 10 of us. Everyone's grapplers, a mix between wrestling and jiu-jitsu athletes, and so kind of understanding, like, it's at super training gym, so the energy is really high and everyone gets pretty hype. And sometimes we need to taper down for some athletes who are competing soon, but they see the energy and the music's loud, and they maybe want to jump in there too on the deadlift platform. So
it's actually, I like that though. I like the fact that they're wanting to get after it, in a sense, because some of those guys, they may get intimidated if you see like, especially in jiu-jitsu and purely jiu-jitsu, you see guys get intimidated of weights, and that's what I've seen just based off experience. You'll get guys from a wrestling background that'll get after it no matter what. Like I got a guy, Tyler Ray. You guys seen him in my videos now. He kind of looks like Dustin Poirier. Everybody talks about him, but he's got a wrestling background. He's from Ohio, and I'll get after it with him just like he's a regular training partner in the weight room, like in a powerlifting room, something like that. And I like that, because that shows me you have versatility. That shows me that you're not afraid to do things that are outside of your realm to get better. And that right there shows character, and that builds upon time. So if you show me character, I know that you can take it to the next level. If you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone, well, that's an issue, because then when you get into a higher level, how much of the mentality is going to carry over, right? If you're always comfortable inside your gym, on the mats with your people, right? And then you go to a big event, and now you have other competitors that are really good, and you know who they are, and then you're not in your gym. How are you going to compete? Are you going to rise to the occasion, or are you going to falter because it is uncomfortable? Yeah. So for that, it's always putting them in those positions. I know people are going to kill me for this, but I'm going to say it anyways. So I had the inside on Jake Paul's camp, right? Yeah. Now, Jake Boswick, you remember Jake, right? Came to the gym. So Jake was a part of his camp for a while. Okay. And he told me, and I was there when he sparred him a couple times, and they set that thing up like it's always a packed house fight. So they'll have the crowd going in the background, like on the radio. They'll have people booing them, and so they shut the lights down. There's a bunch of things that gets him ready for the particular event. And that's one of the smartest things that I've ever heard as far as getting a fighter mentally prepared. There's obviously physical, but mentally is really, really important. Dean Thomas used to do that with us when we had fights. I remember that was like, man, that's exactly what Dean did. He would call all the attendees of the gym, parents, whatever, and they would come out, and we would do it the week before the fight. Let's say we fought on Saturday, it would be that week Saturday before, and it would be at nighttime, and we would do a dog in a hole where basically, you got a fresh guy coming at you every minute, right? But he would be the ref. We'd be in separate corners, be in the cage. You get your walkout music. They'd be booing you or cheering you, whatever. If you were away, like for me, I always fought away from my hometown, so I was always fighting the hometown guy. And so I was always getting booed, right? And I was getting name called and all this stuff, and getting cheered when I get caught, And right there, that made me have the ability to block out any of that, like, non-important, I guess, I don't know what you would say, the things that are going to take you away from your game. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. In a sense. So for that, I think that it's important for every athlete to go through that. So that's basically what I was going after.
I like that a lot, and that is really eye-opening to me, because just to speak candidly, I feel like that's something I failed on as a coach for these guys, is we created that in the gym, but we didn't create that on the mat for them. Like, we really put the pressure on them in the gym to go after, to grind through weights when it was the appropriate time to move faster on dynamic effort work when they needed to, but we didn't necessarily create that same amount of pressure and that same environment on the mat. That's great to hear, and that's awesome. I'm definitely going to take that away.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that if you eliminate those distractions, it's going to be way better. And, in competition, before it starts, it's 90% mental. So you can break right then and there before it even starts. So you have to give them utmost confidence and get them away from those distractions, get them ready and prepared. Obviously strategy comes into play, and if they're well prepared from that perspective, then they're going to do well too as well. And they're well prepared in a physical perspective, their confidence rises. Sure. But if you put them in those positions every day, over and over again, then they just come accustomed to being or feeling that certain way. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. All right, let's take a step back a little bit, and I want to know how you got started over at Super Training with Mark Bell. And if you guys don't know who Mark Bell is, you got Slingshot, you got Super Training, you got Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Check him out. It is the Meathead Millionaire. Millionaire, right?
Yes, sir.
Mark's my guy, man. So this is how I actually met Josh, was going there and doing the podcast. And then from there, we just kind of created a relationship. So how did this all happen?
So this was right around the time where I had worked at the physical therapy office and quickly realized, like, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble because I'm going to school for this, and I realized I don't want to go to school and make this a full-time career. And so around that time, I was kind of looking at just like what my options were, what I was really passionate about, what I really cared about. And, at the time, I was really passionate about jiu-jitsu, was really passionate about lifting weights and being jacked, and just, I think they call like physical culture. That was a huge passion of mine. And so I was trying to find ways of how I could turn that into a sustainable career for me and my girlfriend, or now wife. And I was working at another gym at the time, like a traditional global gym.
We call it Chrome and Carpet Gym.
Yeah, it was definitely a Chrome and Carpet gym. And it freaking sucked.
It was a U-Fit. No, I was kidding.
I freaking hated it. It was terrible, and I recognized that even when I was training, the environment there was just dog crap. It sucked so bad. And so I knew I didn't necessarily want to be progress through the ranks of that and become like a general manager of a gym. I didn't know if I wanted to own my own gym. But I was following a few different people on Instagram who had kind of created their own careers just based off of what they're passionate about. And one of those guys was Mark Bell. And ever since I was following him in high school, I knew he was in my backyard, and where I grew up in Roseville and Sacramento, it's only a 30-minute drive. So I knew for years that he was there, and I never had the balls to go in there and see what's up. And
how old are you now, by the way?
24.
Okay, so you're still young though.
Yeah.
You started when, 4 years ago?
I started, 3.5, 4 years ago probably.
Yeah.
So I was going to jiu-jitsu at this other place and still thinking about Mark Bell and stuff. And at the time where I was going to jiu-jitsu, we were all white belts, and there was one blue belt and the black belt instructor. Oh, wow. And the black belt instructor comes in with the black eye. So we're thinking oh my gosh, it's like some crazy Dragon Ball Z stuff. Who must have given this dude a black eye? Yeah. So we were all asking him questions what happened? Yeah. And he said, I was rolling with this newer guy. He's a bodybuilder. I think he does powerlifting. And I'd been following NSCA for a long time beforehand. He said his name's Nasima or something. I was like, hold up a sec. You mean NSCA? Yeah. He's like, yeah, I think that's his name. We were just doing something. He clipped me. And so then I started piecing together the connections. And so I switched gyms to train at Casio's for a variety of reasons. It wasn't all because I had this man crush on NSCA. It was for other reasons. But so I switched gyms. I meet NSCA, established a relationship with him, and then the end of the school year, was coming up, and it was summertime, and that's prime internship time. So I asked him, like, hey, does Mark or Slingshot do any internships? And he said, I don't really know, but you could talk with our boy Smokey. So I get connected with Smokey.
Shout out to Smokey, bro.
Shout out to Smokey.
That's my boy.
Yeah.
The beard is still strong, I see.
Yes, sir.
It's getting there. He shaved it off, and then he lost his testosterone, and he brought it right back.
Yeah. So I get connected with Smokey, and I talk with him, and he says, well, how about you just come in on Saturday, we'll squat, and then we'll talk about it. And then they freaking wrecked me, and that was awesome, as much as, that I was so beat up afterwards. And it really was like plate quarter, all the way up. And at the time I was 19 or 20,
baby.
And I was thinking, like, do I tell him, like, normally I go like plate 10, quarter 10.
Hell no, you don't do that.
So I got wrecked.
Plate.
That's right. So I got wrecked, and then Mark wasn't there, and so Smokey said, okay, come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mark's here. And so I finally meet Mark, and I was shaking like crazy, super nervous. Yeah. And I said, hey, Mark, Smokey wanted me to talk to you about an internship, and Mark basically said, like, oh, yeah, we don't really do that here. So I was like,
dream shot down.
So, but I knew there was a seminar coming up, and I just said, like, well, I know there's a seminar next weekend. I will do whatever you need me to do. I'll pick up Ed Cohn from the airport. I'll get Stan Efforting coffee. I'll rub Jesse Burdick's back. I don't care what I have to do. Like, I will do anything you want me to do.
Yeah.
So he
that's
said,
a hairy back, man. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that part. So that's kind of how the relationship started, and for lack of a better term, I created the internship for myself. I help out at that seminar all day. Afterwards, Smokey says, hey, how about you just come back, over the summer, and we'll figure out something for you to do.
Sure.
So it started as just cleaning up at the gym, cleaning all the bars, picking up trash, running and getting coffee for people and doing all this stuff. And then it transitioned into a full-time job, which I was there for, I think, 3 years as a 2.5 or 3 years as a full-time employee, and then some more time beyond that as a part-time employee, and that's how it started.
So what did you do while you were there as an employee?
For a long time, I was intern Josh because I did so many different things. They didn't have like an official title.
Yeah. We call that in the sporting world, we call that an athlete. You have a position, you just an athlete.
There we go. So
that's it.
That would be a great description. So everything from social media, helping run Facebook ads, email marketing, talking with the ad agencies on different ways to promote different products, coming up with podcast guest descriptions. So like when you came in, I did all the research on you, figured out all as much stuff as I could about who you are and what you're about and stuff, and provided that information.
It was you that did that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, it was on some I was like, damn, how'd y'all find all this out? This is right here.
It was your boy. So I was doing all that stuff. I was the head admin for markbill.com, which was his subscription site. And through all of that, what was so funny is that like Mark would just rope me into, I'd get like Forrest Gumped into all these different other projects. Like, hey, like Settlegate, what do you think about writing a book? It's like, geez, okay, all right, that sounds good. And I just kept saying yes to all these different things, and kind of towards the end, the last year or so that I was there, the biggest part that I was playing as part of Slingshot was being the admin for markbill.com and running a lot of the text message and email marketing and some of the other marketing campaigns, things like that.
Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. So what have you done as far as marketing goes that you've seen a big increase in brand awareness for yourself too as well? Because I like looking at your TikTok, like I can't right now. I'm dabbling in it. I'm not all the way through.
Yeah.
You and NSCA have took that thing to the next level. So how did you start with that, and then go over like your marketing strategy as much as you want to give away?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. So working at Slingshot was like another college education. I didn't go to school for marketing. I didn't go to school for business, podcast production, audio engineering, none of that stuff. I just went for strength and conditioning. But through that internship at Slingshot, I never did anything related to strength and conditioning. I was just in that environment and learned how to do everything
I'm going to
else.
have you talk to my interns too as well.
Yeah.
Because they do everything but what you just said too as well. So it makes perfect sense.
So that was huge. And so just learning how search terms work, learning how, like, hey, just so you know, you may have, this many thousand Instagram followers, none of those are yours. You don't own any of those.
Yeah.
Instagram can shut you down at any point. Instagram as a whole platform can get shut down at any point. The only thing you really own is just somebody's phone number, somebody's mailing address, which is a little outdated at this point in my opinion, or somebody's email address. So learning how to create engaging content that invites people to get some sort of free downloadable content, a free video, a free webinar. That way you can collect emails, and then from there you can market to those people directly, and you don't have to worry about, I mean, just in good decency, you probably shouldn't say anything too crazy, but you don't have to worry about Instagram getting shut down or your page getting shut down or anything like that. So.
And that's happened to me a few times where I was like, oh, you know, but yeah, we have the growing email list is super important, man. And then you can connect with them on other levels, and you can give them other things that, like, whether it be articles, blog posts, whatever, you know, maybe videos, that exercise breakdown.
Yeah.
So that's one thing for any up-and-coming coaches that are looking to branch out and market themselves and brand themselves. Definitely you want to have an email list.
Absolutely. Yeah. So on top of an email list, some of the biggest things that I learned, I was working with Jessica Smith a lot, who was running basically every social media account for Slingshot, which we have one for everything, it seemed like at the time. And so with her, I was able to learn that, like, people get really tied to either really educational content or really entertaining content, and if you're someone like Mark, you can be entertaining and educational. And people appreciate authenticity, people appreciate just being real. And something that I learned from Steffi Cohen actually was that people appreciate, like, the stuff that we as coaches think, like, the stuff we want to see is not the stuff that all our followers want to see. And that was a big wake-up call for me, because I was using terms of what I thought, like, I would be able to bring into a conversation with someone like you, or someone like Mark, or someone like Jesse Burdick or Nsima. And I quickly realized that most of my followers didn't care enough about strength and conditioning to do the decade of work and research and education for myself, the 2-3+ decades for you and Mark and guys like Jesse. So learning how to, and I don't want to say dumb things down, because it's not necessarily dumbing things down, but making things digestible for someone that's not as invested, and learning everything about the force velocity curve and all that other stuff, and finding ways to make it just make it digestible for them, and being able to build on that. And then the last thing that I'd say that was really huge from a marketing perspective is something I read in Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. There was an excerpt in there, I can't remember who the original author is, but he talked about just establishing 1,000 true fans. If you can establish 1,000 true fans for whatever you do, whether it's music, coaching, a Slingshot product that you have, a supplement that you have, if you have 1,000 true fans, you can make a living for yourself off of having 1,000 true fans. And how do you create 1,000 true fans? You connect with them, you have conversations with them, you be real with them, you're transparent with them, and you don't necessarily need to be their best friend, where it kind of blurs the relationship of a fan, and you know that can get a little weird sometimes. But at least being authentic enough to have real relationships, answer all your DMs, comment back, and at least let someone know, like, hey, I appreciate you for posting a comment. I appreciate you for downloading this free program, whatever the case may be.
Yep. No, you're 100% right. I think going that extra mile and just showing your appreciation goes a long, long ways. I've seen that help myself out, and for me, it's genuine. Like, I really do appreciate it, and I'm not just saying that just to get more followers. We have over 900 plus coaches in the mentorship now from around the world. That's so cool. And so, like, those guys hit me up on a constant basis. But even better that I like to see is that they're having conversations with each other. Yeah. So now you have the chat group that they're all going back and forth, and I love that, man, because then you can create a community, a culture, and they can grow off of each other, and I can just help guide along the ways if needed. Yeah. So that's where, like, I think a lot of young coaches like yourself, that's where you will head. I believe so, and that's where, like, passing the torch onto you, just as, Louis and Mark passed it on to me, you have to pay it forward. And that's one thing that Mark has done tremendously, obviously, with all the free content. Louis did the same thing, and I think he's got that from Louis a little bit, and Dave Tate too as well. Where do you see yourself in the next, let's say, 10 years?
So we talked about this before we started recording, how my kind of transition out of Slingshot and running my own company full time. And in 10 years, at least over the next 10 years, I want to build the top of the line grappling, strength, and conditioning company in the entire world.
Yep.
From not only just a coaching standpoint, to have a team of coaches underneath me that understand the principles required to help these athletes win more matches and get injured less, but also be able to educate, kind of like in a similar fashion to what you're doing with your mentorship program, being able to give back and educate other coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of stuff that guys like you and Mark have done for me just without charging anything and just because you care has been so incredible and amazing. I can't ever like repay you guys for how much it's meant.
I'll tell you how you can repay us is to be successful, is do what you're planning on doing. That's it. That's all we want. Honestly, that's all we want. If me and Mark were sitting here, we say the same thing. So it's really just seeing what we've given you or taught you and putting it into play in your own way. You know, that's really where it comes from.
Well, thank you.
No
That's the plan then.
Yeah.
So for the next 10 years, focusing on strength and conditioning is the biggest goal.
Yep.
And then after that, and we'll see kind of where things pan out at that 10-year mark, but at least in my head and what I've mapped out, around that 10-year mark, I'll transition out of strength and conditioning and focus more on just leadership and just mentorship of young men in general. And I think strength and conditioning is a great pathway and a great gateway drug to help instill principles of leadership, discipline, honesty and integrity, and all these other great things that I think men nowadays need to learn, especially young men. Strength and conditioning definitely works to deliver that message, but I think to ultimately set the world on fire with discipline, which is what I believe my lifelong goal is to do, I'll have to step outside of strength and conditioning and branch out beyond anyone that does jiu-jitsu or wrestling.
Nice, man. All right, well, we got to hit the gym. I got to show you some stuff. You got to show me some stuff. We're going to do a YouTube video, so you guys be prepared for that. Let them know where they can find you. Anything you got coming up, let them know. Yes,
sir. You guys can find me at Joshua Settlage on all social medias, specifically TikTok and Instagram. You can go to my website, settlagestrength.com. And I highly suggest you guys subscribe and check out the YouTube channel, Settlage Strength, the BJJ Strength Coach. That's all I got.
That was good. All right.
Thank you.
See you guys next time.